Oh, I just wanted to fight y'all. But don't mess up my makeup though, because I'm cute tonight. All right, so let's get into this heated argument about Cardi B and is she black? I am Julesy, head smart brown girl in charge, and go ahead and thumbs up because whether you like it, love it, or don't agree at all, likely for this, you probably not gonna agree with me at all, but like, you're still engaged in a critical dialogue, and that's what we are here for. And of course, subscribe if you new. Hit that bell for notifications, because you know my uploading schedule don't be that regular daily, and we try to work on commitment though. But seriously though, I think the conversation around Cardi B and blackness is really attempting to ask a plethora of other questions about racial identity and privilege versus trauma that we don't have the language to aptly discuss. And when I think of all the characters that have populated in this space, Cardi really isn't that offensive to me. And it feels like it's more of a question because of what people are trying to project onto her. Whether it's that they want to herald her as empowering or criticize her as demeaning, which has been why I keep saying I don't need Cardi B to be black. I enjoy her regardless. Race is a social construct that benefits Western imperialism, meaning race was constructed by the colonizers to benefit their bank account. What was meant to be a thing that just allowed colonizers to twist the Bible to say that they had a scripturally ordained right to capture, enslave, and plunder the land and people of Africa, the Americas, and Asia. Wow. The whole world, race has evolved into something much greater than even they expected. Therefore, how we view race, it heavily varies depending on social context. So let us let's get the pillows right and let's back up a little bit here. We do not have the power of language on our side. On purpose, if race was constructed to benefit imperialism and white supremacy, why then would the language that we use to discuss race be of any benefit to the oppressed if we are meant to be kept oppressed? Does that make sense? Kind of touched on this with the Cardi versus Azalea video when I talked about all the other things but Cardi versus Azalea. But it's purposeful that discussing race is so confusing. Think about what slavery was. It was this major architecture that transported millions of Africans from the coast of West Africa to new lands throughout the Americas, North, South, and the Caribbean. Okay? That the colonizers themselves were often unfamiliar with. I recently listened to the Revolutions podcast, a season that covered the Haitian Revolution, and oh dude, I mean, his voice be hella boring, but it was very insightful. And he took his time breaking down how the class system in Haiti was structured around race and how that heavily impacted the revolution and subsequent government. It's like it benefited the slave revolt being successful, but it ensured that they were always stifled. You know, after listening to that, I realized how much this ish was meant to be confusing on purpose in order to subjugate a people that at times outnumber the white folk. You strip someone of an ethnic and cultural identity and replace that with phenotype-based racial markers. You have a never-ending argument that keeps black folks divided. Black folk been in America for over 500 years and we just came up with the term of African American in the late 80s, and folks will fight you over that because they don't want to be called that. It's really not all that unifying because all sorts of folks, even on the academic level, have arguments about what African American the term means and who gets to call themselves that. Oh, it be so messy so quick. Then plenty of people don't realize African Americans have a distinct cultural identity, even some African Americans themselves. Search Black American Confused on Twitter and see how race is used to demean us by our cousins from the diaspora. Us not having the language to discuss the nuances of racial identity means any conversation in that context outside of academic spaces quickly devolves into a divisive argument, leaving us with no progress being made in ultimately defying white supremacy. So when you put together us not having access to the language to productively discuss, and that race is heavily informed by varying social contexts we each hold, what I'm trying to do here is give y'all something to think a little bit deeper while saying this is an argument where I cannot push for my opinion as firmly right or even like more on the right side. This is more of a let's just all think about how we think about it, and it's fine if you think I'm wrong. Societally, we tend to rely on phenotype and saying that someone looks black as a marker for who gets to be black, which is faulty as F. Because aside from someone who is generally a darker skin tone with kinky hair, anything outside of that, social context is at it again. A New Yorker, Californian, or Louisianan really. How you say from somebody from Louisiana? Louisianan? But any of those people likely have a much broader context for what they view as firmly identifiably black phenotype than say someone from South Carolina or Missouri. Also depends on like travel and where people have been to and different black communities they've been able to experience. There's a whole history lesson on why that is informed by what European countries colonized the parts you from. You know, like various parts of America, and how they viewed miscegenation. Wherever there is French influence, there is likely an entire class and ethnic group of mixed race people that are clearly identified and have a name to call themselves. Versus areas of Spanish colonized, you'll see a high admixture. You'll see a high mixture of race that is technically classified by the Catholic Church, and it just gets messy AF, bruh. There's another season on Revolutions about Venezuelan or something else Spanish. I'd be like, this is too much. Just too much. And then the British colonies had hefty miscegenation laws penalizing the mixing of race and keeping it from becoming an acceptable thing until really like post-Vietnam War. So not to get into too much of a history lesson, but even within the States, a lot of us tend to view phenotype differently depending on where we from. And this extends to the Caribbean and Africa. So is you thoroughly confused yet? Cause like, girl, Juicy, just get to the daggone point. Do you think Cardi B is black or not? What is your argument, sis? Like, what is it? With all that I've said, and I have said this before, I generally step away from policing one's race. That means a person, within reason, cause no Rachel Dolezal, but if a person says that they are black based on their ancestry, I take them at their word for it. Cardi, when asked about her race, says she is Latina, not Afro-Latina. Even when positioned around her use of the N-word, you know, she still just is like, well, you know, I'm close enough to that community. I always dated black guys. She doesn't herself say she's black. And she tends to just list her nationalities, Dominican and Trinidadian. I know there are black people in both countries. There's also solid non-black communities in those countries. It's like when Hey Friend Hey is asked about her race, she says she's black by race and clarifies that she is Haitian, Puerto Rican, and Dominican. So I see her as a black woman. When Sunkissed Alba is asked about her race, she just says she's Dominican. So I don't see her as black. Even though she very likely has some sort of African ancestry, I wouldn't really be surprised. But my social context is informed by spending a lot of time in Washington Heights at my nana's house and being heavily snubbed by a particular class of Dominicans as a child. And I see phenotype-wise Cardi as part of that class. Like Monica Style Muse, I see her as black and therefore Afro-Latina because she's by nationality Dominican. But the class of Dominicans that I see Cardi as being a part of was oppressive to the class that I see Monica being a part of, within being both of them still being Dominican. And this is all based on my experience of dealing with specifically New York City Dominicans. That's the lens that colors my social context. And you know, that doesn't necessarily make it right. Cardi says she's Dominican and Trini and talks about the Dominican family that she grew up with in the Bronx. I'm thinking about the years that this particular dominant class of Dominicans from the Bronx and Washington Heights fought to not be seen as black. What they then did to their own class of black Dominicans. And so now that being black is cool and there's a profit to gain, it's like, we're not gonna talk about how families for generations consciously try to Europeanize their bloodlines. Everyone's just black now. We're not gonna talk about how you used to talk about. Oh, okay, wow. Sure, yeah, right, got it, sure, okay. Yes, I've seen the picture of her hair brushed out. Curly hair can be brushed out to look kinkier. White women's can do it too. And what's that make them? Because remember when y'all was mad about that Shea Moisture ad, or the white woman who was posted on Curly Nikki? Remember, she took her French braids out and realized her hair was had a little bit of kink in it. So she felt like natural hair experience. Even I'm being petty, and this is what I'm saying, like the lack of access to language to really discuss this, because really we be trying to have all these other conversations but only have the language to ask these very basic questions, and where does it get us? Nowhere. In all seriousness, it's more about taking old girl at her word, because yes, Afro-Latina is a thing, you know, and I generally just leave it at she's racially ambiguous, because there's not a clear answer on what her race is, and I don't need to project identity on her, and nor do I need her to take an ancestry DNA test. It's like, girl, you're You know, calling someone racially ambiguous is not shade. Christopher, spell my name right when you talk about me, sir. Okay. When someone can decide how the world racially identifies them, that's racial ambiguity. And yes, I know, depending on how I wear my wigs, some people might say I am racially ambiguous as well. But I did spend a lot of time above 125th Street. And no, people do not generally come up to me speaking Spanish unless I have a curly weave in. Generally, it's only in very specific sort of circumstances. I promise you, nobody thought I was Latina in Cuba. People usually confront me thinking I'm African. And either way, it really don't hurt my feelings, somebody saying I'm racially ambiguous, because I could just inform them, not sis, I'm definitely Black American. There's no other room I can walk into and be accepted as a member of that race, but Black. I don't know if that's the same experience for Cardi. And when asked about it, again, I just take her at her word. She falls back on being simply Latina. On the ambiguity, Black and white are not the only race. The Carib to the Americas was inhabited by indigenous peoples that did not just disappear into the wind or stay entirely separate from others. Spaniards have a long history with the Arabs and the Moors. So typically, unless someone can say this grandparent was Black, I don't view them as Black, but I don't invest in telling them what they are or aren't, you know? Just like, I'm sure by plenty of people's social context, Cardi looks Black. You know, me personally, I don't really see it. She definitely, you know, looks not white to me, like not Northern European, but she low-key when I like think of like Spanish art from like the period. You know, like the paintings or the artwork you see from like 1600 Spanish people. I think she don't look too far away from them, to be honest. But even with all that, I cannot say whether she's Black or not. I leave it at Cardi B is whatever race she claims to be. And yes, that is a privilege. See what I just did there? When we are asking if Cardi B is Black, we are likely digging at something much deeper that has little to do directly with Belle Khalees. Did you enjoy this discussion? Did you engage? Did you leave a comment down below? Don't worry, ain't nobody judging you if you feel like typing out a whole essay, girl. Get that syntax together. Or sir, go ahead, engage. You know, we're gonna love a respectful debate or argument. And don't leave yet, because you're definitely gonna click for the next video to watch and have another discussion, another conversation. You know, these are fun. It's cool. Thanks for watching. Deuces.